So El Cholo was up to his usual tricks last night, putting Atletico top of the league at Christmas, 3 points clear of what was an indifferent Barcelona from the start of the season. However, top of the table, 3 points clear with a game in hand. How has he done it? How has he transformed the season? And we're going to take a look at the difference in the three tactics that he's had over the years, that 2014 La Liga victory compared to the 2021 side, and then this side, the 24-25 iteration of it. And for me personally, I do actually think this is the best Atleti squad team El Cholo has put together. So we're going to take a deep dive into El Cholo's tactic from this season and why I'm calling him the outlier. Diego Simeone, also known as El Cholo, has often been described as aggressive, controversial, pragmatic, defensive, boring, anti-football. However, this season's side, despite the performance last night, because that was classic Simeone, this season's side is a little more exciting to watch. I've watched a whole host of games and I've actually enjoyed watching them compared to what we have in recent seasons. In the current age of tactics where positional play and the copycats, I suppose, of Pep Guardiola, we're talking Maresca, Arteta, Alonso, a lot of teams are playing very, very similar. And with that, it's making football sometimes quite boring. And also it's then relying on the individual quality of players you've got in each position. And with that, Simeone over the last, 10 years or so, has completely ignored what is most popular at the moment. He has had little snippets where he's tried to make Atleti a little bit more exciting, maybe more noticeable with the signing of João Felix, which didn't quite turn out the way he wanted. However, they've spent big again, over 200 million euros. This time, though, even though it feels exciting, the players feel a little bit more Atleti, a little bit more Madrid, Simeone based, and it gives him the title, I think, as the ultimate outlier. So as I said, with all them tactics in place, he's doing it differently. You may call Ruben Amorim maybe an outlier as well because he's playing a different system with the three at the back. However, his principles are often similar to what you see in positional play. Other outliers across Europe, you'd maybe look at Simone Inzaghi with those rotations between the centre-backs and the central midfielders. And also you've got Edoni Iriola at Bournemouth, who are performing fantastically this season and doing things a little bit differently in terms of the out-of-possession stuff. A lot of their focus is on out of possession, and Diego Simeone definitely fits into this in the age of 4-3-3s and even 3-4-3s. He has dabbled with that, but it's very much Simeone based. And after an indifferent start to the season, with draws against Villarreal, Espanyol, Real Vallecano, and a decent point against Real Madrid, he's gone back to his old tried and trusted 4-4-2. The 12-game winning streak has also coincided not just with the tactic, but the introduction of a player that we'll talk about very soon. So what I would class the more defensive formations out of the three was probably the 2014 one, the first La Liga title. Generally going with that 4-4-2. He has been known across multiple parts in different seasons to go to a 5-3-2 as well, but generally likes to go for this 4-4-2. And what he expected was the wing-backs in Juan Fran and Luis to get extremely high, give them all the width, because he did generally play with two kind of central midfielders in the wide areas. You know, Turan was a very good dribbler, but liked to come inside and play. And we know Koke, who at that time was a lot younger, but did like to drift inside and get on the ball. So it would often be a sort of like a 4-2-2-2, giving him, of course, a really narrow structure with the four central midfielders all coming in and rotating. They also had Godin and Miranda, both at the peak of their sort of like physical powers at that time, but were not the quickest in behind, so they would often drop back, retreat. And with Diego Costa up front, would often use him as a definite out ball work, hold the ball up, work the channels, rough up the centre halves, allowing then an aging David Villa. And this is important with the front two that he's had over these seasons. An aging David Villa alongside Acosta to get the goals. Wasn't pretty, but was super effective, giving Simeone and Atleti the 2013-14 La Liga title. Moving on to the 21 side, very much similar, just a couple of little changes. Llorente was fantastic during this season, acting as sort of like a right midfielder, central midfielder, working in behind the front two, goal and assist contribution during that season. They had Kieran Trippier on the right-hand side, who was very good crossing from deep areas, not as quick and as athletic of what we're maybe seeing now with Atleti. Hermoso on the left-hand side was a left centre-back kind of converted into a very decent full-back, and then once again, Saul out on that left-hand side, predominantly a playmaking midfielder, moving from that wide area in. And it was very much the similar way we're relying on those fullbacks in wide areas to provide width, with the strike force very, very different. Still a front two, João Felix and Suarez. Now, we did have Suarez, who was absolutely phenomenal during the season, but this was not the Suarez from the MSN era at Barcelona or even the one at Liverpool. This was an aging Suarez, a poacher in the box. Wasn't able to contribute maybe what you'd expect off the ball alongside a João Felix, who had his best season with Athletic during the season, but generally not great out of possession. Two very ball-hungry players, but out of possession. Gave them to some similar problems, which saw him after this La Liga win season breaking up the tactic and going back to a 3-5-2. That brings us forward to this season, and as you could see, formation started generally with a 3-4-3. It was trying to get Soloth, Griezmann and Alvarez into a side all at once, trying to do different patterns and trying to get different combinations in between the three, and it just wasn't working. So with that, the change was made, and he's gone back to his trusted 4-4-2 with a little bit, I think, of a tactical tweak. A very key player that we said we would mention, and it's actually his son, Giuliano. Now, not an amazing player, was out on loan last season, has only just started featuring, coinciding with the changing sort of like tactic. I think injuries as well at right back. I think Molina got injured, and Azpilicueta's been injured, who was playing sort of like a right-sided of a back three or right full-back, has made this tactical switch with Llorente, who is can literally play anywhere out on the pitch. Him moving to right back and then having Giuliano out on this right-hand side. Like, as I said, he's not amazing technically. He's not on the same level as even maybe a Thomas Lemar technically, but what it gives you is that energy, that Atleti Madrid style aggression, similar to his dad. He's direct when he gets it. He kind of not fits in technically the same, but if you think of sort of like these past wingers of Antonio Valencia at Manchester United, the Mark Albrighton at Leicester City, maybe even the Dirk Kuyt at Liverpool, not so much in terms of the technical comparison, but just what they give the team. Give them decent output numbers, but an absolutely wonderful team player to have in the squad, and his inclusion in the last 12 games has been absolutely key to their upturn in form, which has seen them go top of La Liga. So this is the team that they've generally been going with. The left-hand side with Conor Gallagher changes depending on the opponent, and we'll talk about that when we break down the tactic very, very soon. But this is where it gets different for me. Llorente, I would put him down as a more attacking right-back in terms of quality, technical quality that they've had in the past with Kieran Trippier, and even further back in Juan Fran, despite them two being wonderful fullbacks. Galan on that left-hand side is a wonderful left-back and is giving them that more important width with that movement of Conor Gallagher playing out in that 4-4-2. We know that he will want to come inside. The two centre-backs as well, like Langley has been a Barcelona reject, maybe even a Tottenham Hotspur reject over the last couple of seasons, and he's found his feet. Lenormand has been out injured, and Langley's come in alongside Jimenez, and I think it's given them the opportunity to just squeeze a little bit higher up the pitch compared to what they would have been able to do with sort of like a Stefan Savic. Codine, not absolutely amazing with their sort of like turning towards goal in terms of recovery runs. I think Jimenez and Langley just gives them that opportunity just to squeeze up the pitch when they need to. Maybe not so much in the bigger games, but in games when they may be expected to win and dominate, I think it allows them to be another 15, 20 yards up the pitch. Moving into midfield, they've got DePaul, who will like to dictate play, drop deep, sometimes dropping into a back three at times, alongside that Koke, more aging Koke, and then Giuliano on that right-hand side. Direct, keeps his width, he's right-footed as well, will want to hold his width whenever he can. And then up front now, this is where I think it gets interesting. Remember in the past, they've had that Diego Costa and David Villa pairing. David Villa was in his, I think, like 30, maybe 32, 33 at the time. Out of possession stuff, not great. They've then moved to the 2020-21 season where they had an aging Suarez against the João Felix, who out of possession stuff was not great. And then this time they've tamed it with an aging Antoine Griezmann, but his off the ball stuff is phenomenal. He will often drop in and mark maybe a 6 and take them out of the game. Works extremely hard for his side. And then alongside a Julian Alvarez, who we know is an absolute threat, a pest, tremendous on the ball, and works extremely hard for the team. And I think with that combination of a little bit more energy in the middle, Saul, as much as he was good for Atleti, has been moved on, hasn't got that energy. We've also got Barrios that has played multiple times over the last few weeks instead of Koke, alongside DePaul in that midfield. You've then got the pace, a little bit more pace in the defence. It just means that they're keeping their Atleti style, their rigid style, narrow out of possession, but with that upturn, I think, in individual quality. Also, they've got the X Factor, last night's match winner in Soloff. We'll talk about him and the changes we make when he comes onto the pitch. So the build-up structure can often vary, and this is a variation which actually sees Giuliano coming inside there. He is highlighted, the number 22. They've got your two holding midfielders in DePaul, that's on the ball right now, alongside Barrios, that number 8. And as you can see, a really tight system. Galan is the width on that left-hand side. They're actually playing Lino out on the left-hand side, the number 12, who was inverted and gone really narrow. Julian Alvarez is coming in, helping with the progression through the pitch. Then this build-up changes depending on personnel. I think in games when they're expected to dominate, he does like to sometimes Conor Gallagher come out of the sides, and you have to go with a Lino on that left-hand side, more of as a defensive winger, more of an attacking fullback than an out-and-out winger, and it still gives you that little bit of pace, maybe a little bit of extra width, but still with that defensive thought of not having two out-and-out wingers on either side. Now, this is one of my favourite goals. As you can see, Giuliano out on this right-hand side, holding the width extremely high in what would be a 4-4-2. You've got Galan giving the width out on that left-hand side. A little bit more open. They're playing Las Palmas, who are generally a controlling side, not going to be direct, not going to hurt you directly from counter-attacks and transitions as much, so they've been a little bit more expensive. As you can see, the person on the ball is Rodrigo de Paul, coming really deep to build out with that 3, with Molina, the number 16, playing as the right fullback. And how it develops is it's all about the movement of Antoine Griezmann and his little bit of a roaming to create that space to allow Giuliano to get in behind. So as you can see, Griezmann then moves into a little area, creates that space. The ball's played into Molina, and now you can see Giuliano's going to spin into that area, gets in behind. Look at Antoine Griezmann. He's not actually moved during this highlight. He knows he's not going to keep up, and Giuliano carries through and scores. Tremendous little bit of movement, and something that we can quite easily recreate, I think, in Football Manager. So despite Lino playing a number of games this season, this would be my best 4-4-2. Now we're going to go through the tactic itself, go through all the player and team instructions, then we're going to have a little look in the game, how it looks, how we're performing, and a couple of little tweaks. Things you need to make, opposition instructions, what happens when Soloff comes on, what happens when we play a big side, when we play a smaller side. We're going to go through that now. Patreons, tactical variations of this. There will be 2 or 3 tactical variations as a direct download for you to download straight into your FM. So go check it out. If you're enjoying the content, support the channel like all these 100+ people are doing at the moment. That would be wonderfully appreciated. Go check it out, link in the description. But we're going to go through the tactic right now. So what we're starting with is all black. Yes, plays out the back, but, Simone, he's not bothered in particular about in possession patterns. It's very basic build-up, similar to sort of like an Eddie, kind of like an Eddie Howe. He doesn't have lots of rotations and set patterns and what we could call, I think, automisms. I'm going to put that word across the screen right now. You know what I mean? In terms of build-up play. So with All Black, he will often play it out to the centre-half, so he'll quite happily go along. So I'm going to go sweeper-keeper on defend for him. Now, Llorente is an interesting one. I think he's been fantastic playing at right-back. He can play in the game a whole host of different positions. Injuries to Molina and early on, and I think Giuliano as well, the introduction of him has seen Llorente maybe go from a defensive right winger to a fullback. So we're going to just put him as a fullback on support. When you've got Simone in front of you, they're necessarily not important to get in beyond and in behind. Now, he does do that on occasions with that fullback on support, and we'll take a little look at that in a minute. The 2 centre-halves, very comfortable in possession. We still want to try and break lines and pass over the top. Alvarez, Griezmann, Simeone, they're quite happy to run in behind at times. Gallagher as well, a deep late run from him could be really useful. So with both centre-halves, we're going to go ball-playing defenders on defend. We don't necessarily need the dribble in more instruction. They don't often want to carry into the midfield area and try and break a block up that way. It's just generally, they're quite happy to hit, percentage-wise, possession is still quite low, around sort of like just over 50%. Quite happy to knock balls long, get pressed up the pitch, Simeone, Gallagher, DePaul, Koke, Griezmann, Alvarez, all good at working on 50-50s and creating that little bit of chaos in that final third that Simeone likes. Left-hand side is super important. So with Galan, it would be a wing-back on support. And you will see that nice little variation of holding in build-up, but then also getting onto that attacking line. Don't want him to be too high. I think attack with Galan would not be the Simeone way. It's do it at the right time. And I think the wing-back on support gives you that. Simeone, as you can see, he's not amazing in the game, but what he does give you, look, 16 work rate, can dribble a little bit, can finish. Everything is average, but a tremendous team player for the team. Actually looked at his FM, he prefers to be as pressing forward, and something that they may use if there's maybe an injury to maybe an Alvarez at times. Injury crisis, you may see Juliana moving up and maybe a Llorente. We've still got Joaquin Correa that we've not talked about yet. So with Simeone, we're going to go winger on attack. Doesn't like it. But then for me as well, it would be run wide with the ball. Now, this combination will change. I think if it then becomes a Molina, who is definitely more aggressive. You could even go inverted winger. If I could put up that little screenshot, that was actually Llorente on that right-hand side. So if you wanted to change things in games and make things a little bit different, I think having Molina on the pitch as a wing-back on support, in particular as well, when you get Soloth on the pitch, having Molina on, who's got a crossing of 13, good pace, good energy down that right-hand side, very direct, having him on with an instruction of cross to the far post. That's what I would do. Cross more often, cross to the far post, and I would do that when having Soloth on the pitch. But right now, Llorente's got the jersey, and as I said, Simeone playing as that winger on attack with the instruction, run wide with the ball. Now, these two are interesting. Koke's found himself out the side. I think he enjoys Barrios. I think because he's just a little bit more energetic, 20 years old, decent playmaker, good, not progressor. He's that number 6/number 8. He's not going to do absolutely amazing. Good with his switches of play at times, but a little bit more energy when they're playing that 4-4-2. Compared to a Koke who maybe in the game has got it, but generally lacking a little bit, maybe a pace now, strength. Still says he has the stamina in the game. But I think when they're expecting to be a little bit more out of possession based, Koke might find himself on the bench like he did last night. So with these two, I'm going to go DePaul as a deep line playmaker on support, just so he can drop in at times. You'll even see him dropping in to make a back three alongside the Koke. Koke have just gone central midfielder on support, but what I have done is hold position. DePaul already has that in him. It's just so when, as you can see with the screenshot, when they have these attacks, Koke, DePaul, Barrios, whoever it is, like to support behind the ball. We'll often see DePaul, the goal that he scored against Barca last night was very much coming onto it around the edge of the area while breaking into the box. So that's important that we have those two positions kind of set. It does allow movements from the wide area. It also covers them from counter-attacks a little bit more, a little bit of better rest defence when they have possession of the ball. And then this left-hand side, we've actually had two variations of this tactic. We've been rocking this one here at times, which has him as a Carrilero. I think the issue we've got is just with the football manager part of it is, yes, we know that this is out of possession, but because of the position out of possession, it obviously then really does affect the in possession. And we've had varying ways and varying successes, and I think we'll talk about it now. The issue I found, this one is more of a threat from a central area, and having these runs that we'll see from him at Atleti this season with the instruction of get further forward. Now, we've got him as a Carrilero. I know it's the in-possession stuff, but generally it will help a little bit more in terms of a wider starting position. In terms of the then out-of-possession stuff, what we have had is overlapping fullbacks on that right-hand side and caused a little bit of a problem. So in the game that we've just played against Leganes, we changed his role throughout the game. So the first half, he played as a Carrilero on the ball. And as you can see, 25 touches in that first half. Not all of them, but generally in that left sort of like half space. Not many in the wide areas at all. His out of possession, average position, a little bit wider than the inner. Second half, we then changed it. We then moved to the 4-4-2 with a wide midfielder on that left-hand side. We saw him get on the ball twice as much in that wide midfield role. But, interestingly, still wide, but not super wide. So with the team instructions, what we play instructions we've got in the tactic has just helped us get, I think, a really nice balance. It also then helps us the out of possession stuff. He's going to set up in that 4-4-2 and help Galan out of possession. So with the Gallagher role, we're going to go wide midfielder on support with sit narrower and get further forward because we want to see these runs for him. This is he's perfect to a tactic, and I think one of the reasons to a Simeone tactic and one of the reasons why he's been signed because he's disciplined, energy, good goal scoring threat. Like a lot of the times he gets in the area. I think it was actually the Rodrigo de Paul goal that they scored last night. I'll do a little screenshot now. He gets right into the penalty area and is often in and around it from this wide area. And de Paul and Koke supporting, but him being the box crasher Often you'll get Alvarez and Griezmann drifting out wide. It's important that they have a box crasher from midfield, and Gallagher is definitely that. And then the front two, to recreate that little movement we had with Griezmann dropping in and then Simeone hitting the space, we've put Griezmann on the right-hand side, DLF on support, roam from position. And then what we'll have as well at special occasions, when you're just finding that the away team or the team are getting on top, we will often maybe mark specific position and we'll maybe mark that number 6. Tremendous at doing those little jobs, especially for France in the recent sort of like Euros and World Cups. He's been tremendous at not just the in-possession stuff, but the out-of-possession stuff as well. Alvarez, left-hand side, pressing forward on attack. Now, depending on which one you might want to do, at times as well, I've clicked in stay wider just to give us a little bit more width, just so he can work that line a little bit, especially if Gallagher's coming in here, Gallan's on the ball. Sometimes he has to recycle the possession a lot because there's not a forward pass. So maybe just having that stay wider on will allow Alvarez to go around and in behind. Now, the mentality's a weird one because depending on who you'll play will change. And I've tried to not go any less than balanced, mainly because of the team instructions and the player instructions that you may tweak. I think having the 4-4-2 balanced is more than enough, and then the player roles and duties instructions will then dictate how the team plays. So when we've been expected to win and try and dominate games a little bit, especially the home games in the Liga, we've gone to positive. They want to get on the ball. They want to play forward. They want to play. It doesn't mean that we're going to get massive possession numbers, but we want to play. We want the ball in their half rather than ours. Now, fairly wide attacking width. We need to change that fairly narrow. All right, they're still playing very, very narrow in possession. If the ball is on that right-hand side with Giuliano, the team shuffles across. It's not generally, we've often seen little snippets of maybe the fullback staying out wide, but predominantly he's getting ready for that loss of possession, making sure that they're well structured. What we are going to do in here, pass into space, they're the highest, apart from Barcelona, for through balls in the Liga this season. So we're going to have pass into space on. Slightly more direct because we want the ball to be played. Their possession numbers, despite dominating games, is not possession based. We want to play forward. Doesn't mean that we're going to go long all the time, but just a little tweak. Can we play through the lines a little bit quicker, slightly more direct? Tempo, for me, has to be higher. You want to try and get that quick, in particular, in transitions when they're going to get opportunities in them bigger games, being able to play quickly, couple of passes and then in behind. The 2 goals from Barcelona, said watch the highlights from last night. You'll soon see how quickly they got from back to front. Time wasting, that will change throughout the game. I always have it on sometimes anyway for the tactic, just mainly because when it's 0-0, 1-0, they're happy with that. They're not particularly looking at going out and blowing away teams. So I've been a little bit pragmatic in games, depending on how you're doing. Might have to be never chasing a game, drop it, winning, drawing a big team in maybe Europe or in the Liga, put it on sometimes, or even more often, frequently, and I will leave that up to you. No playing out of defence. Focus the play down the right-hand side. If you look at the focus of attacks, predominantly put on that right-hand side, and that's down to the introduction of Giuliano on that right-hand side. But we're going to actually have overlap on the left. We need to try and hold that play. They allow, don't overdo it. They're quite patient at times in that final third and wait for that opportunity for Gallan to get around that left side. So that on here, don't have work into the box on. They're still quite happy to throw balls into the box and work on second balls and 50-50s and duels in that penalty area. However, when it comes to the Solath coming on, we're going to hit crosses early. Remember, if we are hitting crosses early, we want to target that far post. So if it's coming from the right, we want to target that far post. Wherever Solath's on, he's going to kind of dominate that fullback, height for height, work on that fullback, cross to the far post, and then he can nod in. Putting those 2 little instructions on, you'll definitely see some success when you get the big man on. Be more disciplined. I've left the others off. Obviously, it's so disciplined, but with your player roles that you've got, your players naturally, the ability that you've got, you're still going to win games Atleti style. In transition, now this will change depending on your opponent. Again, maybe not a counter press. They do counter press at times, even when they lose it. That, a counter press is not constant pressure. It's a number of seconds after the ball is lost, and they do like to hunt that down and get the ball back. So counter press on, and generally as well in the big games, counter press. If you're going to drop in your defensive line a little bit, you've got to have that. You've got them 2 players up front that stay generally quite high. You've got to have a counter attack on. In transition as well, I've kind of left that off for the goalkeeper. He varies it. I think when you're playing against a low block, you might want to distribute it to the centre halves or even a playmaker just to stop it going in. You don't want to be firing balls in early on from a low block. They do like to build using a playmaker. With that, Alvarez and Griezmann are probably the worst in terms of holding the play up from aerial balls that they've had in these 3 iterations, from the 14 to the 21 to the 25. So going quickly over the top into the strikers is maybe not the best thing. That, though, can change when Sorloth comes on. And then the out of possession stuff, once again, it changes. For me, we're going to invite crosses. They get very narrow. Go on then, cross it into the box. We've sometimes got 3. Last night they brought on Lenormand and played a 5-3-2 for the last few minutes. Get crosses in the box. I'm confident my defenders, and as well for modern football, there's not many strikers out there that are good at attacking the ball with their head, so they're quite happy to invite crosses into the box. Keeps that compactness. Trap the ball outside as well. Funnel that ball into wide areas. What he does like to do is uses that touch line as a defender, and then that's a trigger press, often been out to the fullbacks, which we'll speak about when we go through the opposition instructions. Drop off more, potentially, Liga boys, but you have got that little bit of pace now in behind. You've got your Llorente, your Galán, decent fullbacks. You've also got the 2 centre-halves, Langley's quite pacey, alongside Jimenez, so I don't think you need to put that in. Get stuck in, definitely need that on. Trigger press I wouldn't choose. I would leave off. And then the main one is the defensive line. Now, for the lot part of the season, we've been playing this in the game, which is a higher line to get us up the pitch, but a mid-block. Very rarely do they go and press centre-halves. They like to get into a mid-compact block. And the best way to do that, I think if you go standard, it leaves a few too many gaps. He wants compactness, so go higher. By all means, then, if you're going to go play the bigger boys, I would then go standard line with a lower defensive block, so we're still nice and compact, that really narrow, compact 4-4-2. And you can only do that by having those 2 sets, standard and low, or mid-block with then the higher. Not much higher, just higher. Moving into the opposition instructions, depending on who you're playing, for me, the trigger press would always be the fullbacks. So trigger press, always the left and right back. And that initially then is the instruction to go press. We don't do the centre-halves. I would say never. If you're playing up against a back 3, the trigger press then does become the 3 wide centre-backs. So the middle centre-back would be never, and that depends on the role. So you'd have to change that game from game. So a back 4, leave the centre-halves, trigger press the full-backs. In a back 5, it would be obviously the wing-backs would then come in, but then I would leave the middle centre-back, and then we would start pressing with the strikers with the 2 wide centre-halves. Interesting as well, when you're doing this one with the 4, you need to make sure that you have show on right foot for the right back and show on left foot, and that will show them down the line. That's what we want. We don't want them coming back inside and allowing to switch play and move in that system, that 4-4-2. Once we've got on one side, we want to keep them one side, and can we win the ball being that really aggressive 4-4-2 out of possession. And then tweaks to be made. We've talked about the team stuff. A tweak definitely to be made is what happens in here. So you've got a Joaquin Correa that can come in. He can literally be any role you want him to be. He can play out wide as a winger at times, play as a DLF, a false 9, an advanced forward, whatever you want. The interesting one I like to do, though, is having the Alvarez on this right-hand side, pressing forward, alongside Sorloth, who I would then put as a target man on attack. And then that's when you'd maybe then bring in even a Molina with the instruction that we spoke about as cross more often and aim for the far post. And then what you get with that, with the added instructions that hit early on, that will give us those bot crosses from deeper into a Sorloth. Now, what we've noticed with the season is that we've had a decent start. We've had a couple of goals conceded in the last few games, but have had a tremendous comeback, 82, 84. And look at the goal scorers as well. Really weird that we did this before last night's game, but we managed to 2-2 at Barca, which I think Atletico would have been happy with last night. But a 2-2 late on, Sorloth coming off the bench to equalise, and then to pull one back, and then Rodrigo to Paul. It's the other way around, but it's nice that we managed to get a little bit of symmetry with it. And as you can see from the game, they dominated in terms of possession, but we've managed to create, disappointing for Barcelona last night. They should have probably won it with the amount of chances they had. Rafinha in particular missed a couple. Lewandowski absolutely missed one right in front of goal. And then they were punished by Atleti having 2 fantastic counter-attacks. So obviously when you're chasing games, you need to make sure that counter-press on. They have the players to do it. They have the energy to do it. So as you can see, Giuliano's lost the ball here, but this is what he does best. So aggressive out of possession, teeing up for Sorloth, to hit home. Now, despite us losing the game and chasing, we still didn't alter the midfield pairing. So as you can see, DePaul and Koke camping on the edge of the area. The ball comes out. They're more of a recycle option, a supporting option. Like if there's a loss of possession, we're in and around it to win it back. However, this is what DePaul does do. He comes in last minute at times and ends up, I think last night he fired in from the edge of the area. There has been a couple of goals, and I'll show you little clippets of it now. My favourite goal so far of the season with him arriving late. Nice little movements down the left with Conor Gallagher, gives and goes, and then Rodrigo DePaul hitting home. So that's what they do with those duties, supporting from the edge of the area. Now, this ends up being a goal for us, and it's Julian Alvarez who is the man that actually taps home. And we're just going to highlight Conor Gallagher now. This is playing with the Carrilero for the first half against Leganes. He's playing as a Carrilero. So we've had a loss of possession in here. The ball's then obviously going to be put out to that right back. And this is the little bit of a problem we have. He stays quite narrow. The stay wider is generally the in-possession stuff, and I would prefer him to be out there. But however, because Alvarez is such a team player, and as I said, this is why Athletic can play a little bit more aggressively in that final third, is because of the attitude and the aggression of the two forwards. And Alvarez does a tremendous job at getting right back in there and helping out and acting as a winger. We get the ball back. We know we got the 1v1s in there. Galan wins the duel, and then we can play. And then this is where we start just building up. Gallagher is very much a central midfielder, and this is often what they get. Galan is then the only out ball on the left-hand side. So I think it's important to make sure we have that focus on right on. So when it does come, the idea is generally we want that ball on that outside to Giuliano anyway. When Galan has it, he does often get it and he comes back inside. It's a good way of just holding possession, keeping possession. Rodrigo Paul is in an area where he's going to help with build-up. But this is what they often do in low blocks. They're quite patient with it. It's not launching forward. Remember, the two strikers are not tremendous out of position. And then what we're going to try and wait for our opportunity. DePaul works in a nice little bit of space. And then can we get this out ball on here with Giuliano on this right-hand side? And we know what he's like. We know he's direct. This time we've got an underlapping run from Llorente, that fullback on support, and there is Alvarez to tap home. So it was a little bit of a worry. I don't really want Alvarez doing that all the time because that's going to take him out of the game a little bit. It's going to make it probably harder to counter-attack as well. So that was why I changed it. Despite us scoring the goal, it was a little bit of a worry. So that's why I decided to change it at halftime. You may not get from him in real life, but this is what we get in the game because he's acting as a winger. Like the ball in the box, he exploits the fullback and heads home. I don't think we'll get that. We won't get that from him targeting the back post. If he is going to make his runs, he generally makes them very narrow, arriving late into the penalty area in that sort of like penalty spot area rather than attacking the back post as a wide midfielder. So that's the thing that you've got to weigh up. The Carrilero will give you that more central midfield feel. However, the out of possession stuff is maybe more important. What you could also maybe do at times is maybe do a central midfielder on attack instead of a Carrilero. Maybe that'll give you those forward runs. And it's just a case of, once again, being pragmatic. He changes. Simeone constantly changes and changes depending on what he sees in-game. But it's not all bad with the Carrilero. Conor Gallagher ends up scoring 2 goals as a Carrilero. Now, what it does do is I think it gives space for Galan on this left-hand side. So you've got a better switch because he will suck in a full-back. He might even suck in sort of like a right midfielder as well. So, as you can see, he's really narrow. Not so much in terms of what he would do real life because he would probably hit the box a little bit more, but gives you that option as well. And also it's a tremendous rest defence position that he has, camping on the edge of the area. So that's Conor Gallagher. And I said the last one is Solath and that little bit of X factor. As you can see, we've just played Alaves. We absolutely battered them with 38% of the ball. 18 shots to their one, like tremendous defensive numbers and attacking numbers. We should have scored a lot earlier, but we had to leave it to the big man. So every time he comes on, target man on support, cross more often and put in that target the back post. It's not in play, but look, in the last minute and you're getting a 6'4" striker on, he's going to cause problems. And I said, I think he's got 5 or 6 goals already from the bench for Atleti. He's gone from being there, not star signing because obviously that was Alvarez, but I think the idea was to try and get all 3 in the team to being a superb team player, a superb asset to bring on. All right, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the more edited, concentrated. Hope the quality, as you can see, has improved. If you like this format, I imagine the video is going to be a lot bigger, a lot longer, but I think it's important to really try and hone in and really focus on every little bit detail that we've covered in this video. Thank you for watching. Smash a like, check out the Patreon, and we'll see you very soon. Merry Christmas.